It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson here, joined by Beth Lindop from ESPN, Ian Ryan and John Gibbons, all to talk about Liverpool failing to do the business against Fulham and win 5 on the bounce for the first time this season. No sides managed to do that either, which may well suggest that it is indeed difficult to get a proper run-up in this league at the moment, but we might talk about that. We'll talk about other things as well. And to come, Simon Bowers talking about general health-related matters and how we can all be a bit healthier, which brings us on to Peloton, John, the official digital fitness partner of Liverpool FC, our partner as well. We're very, very pleased to be partnering with them. The general delight that I've said I'll do a show on the Peloton is hard to put into words, really, to be honest with you. The number of people who brought it up to me, people I would have previously thought of as friends, have gone out of the way to bring it up. But yes, I'll do 60 minutes of the Anfield Wrap on a Peloton.
Well, I like having it there. It's been in various positions. We had its own room for a while, which was brilliant because you could use it whenever you want. But it wasn't a room we were paying for. So
the good people of Avenue HQ blocked this. Can you move?
Eventually went, hang on, we can rent this space out for actual money. So we lost that. We had in the video studio, so it's in there now. And one of the reasons I like it is so we do a lot of tours and people come in to see us, especially at the moment. Obviously, a lot of people wanted to come to Liverpool, and it's a good conversation piece. And people were talking. The guys who came in last week were really excited by it. So it is nice having it there, but also it is, I would say, perfect for you doing this. It just needs a little change of the camera angle. I'm looking at you now on the bike going, yes, Neil, that is a great question.
Andy's going to get me DJI'd hooked up, so they'll be on there all the way through, so we'll make that work as well, 100%.
But no, I'll back you. I'll back you in most things.
Yeah, I want to be clear. If they've won it Sunday, I'm not doing it the day after.
Oh my God, this is backtracking this. What do you think, Ian?
I was going to say, so which game have you got? Have you got a game marked out for it?
So I'll just be like a random game in the summer.
No. I'll do it before the end of the season. So I'll do it I'll do it after let's just say hypothetically it gets done at the end of April.
Yeah.
I'll do it the first week of May. I mean, we all know it'll be bedlam if Liverpool win the league on Sunday anyway, with everything we're going to do on the Anfield Wrap on any given Monday. So the idea of, and by the way, you've got to get the Peloton to the slaughterhouse just doesn't feel feasible.
Yeah. No, okay. All right. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Andy wants me to try and live stream, but he's just put that on there as well. Excellent
Not
stuff.
to make life harder for everyone, but is there a chance of getting a head cam?
I mean, we can have a go.
Just so we can, and that could be live streamed also, so people can go on the journey with you.
I feel like I'm now almost wearing a miner's helmet in order to do this on top of everything else. That's
all coming together.
It is all coming together. So we are very pleased to be partnered by Peloton for this fantastic season. That remains a fantastic season, but Liverpool have sort of done the best otherwise. Ian, let's do the big picture first and foremost. At a point down on the 2 games in the week, I know I'll point out just the game in the weekend, but I think everyone saw the 2 games sensibly as a bit of a piece. It's not ideal. I'd much rather they'd just matched Arsenal's results across the 2, but it's not terminal. In the end, Everton have done us a big favour on Saturday, really.
Yeah, they have, yeah. And Liverpool obviously had an opportunity to go 14 clear, which, listen, I think most people would agree it is done. It should happen in the next couple of weeks. But until it's, absolutely mathematically kind of out of the question that Arsenal can't catch us, you're always thinking, you just want to see the points go on the board, essentially.
Yeah.
And they had a big opportunity to do that at the weekend. And for whatever reason, I'm sure we'll get into it, they don't quite manage it. I think most people would have took probably 4 points from those 2 games because you feel like, you're not going to lose any ground. I always felt Everton would maybe cause Arsenal a problem, especially with that Real Madrid game on the horizon on Tuesday. It always felt sensible that Arteta would make changes because he's not a stupid man. Well, not all the time anyway. So he knows that their probably best way home to get a trophy, even though it's up against a European giant, is probably the Champions League, because catching Liverpool as they were 12 points behind just feels like mission impossible. But, Liverpool play the game. They don't play particularly well. I thought it was disappointing. You don't want to beat them over the head too much because they've got themselves into an unbelievable position.
I was delighted to beat them over the head at half-time, Ian, so beat them over the head by all means.
Well, I think maybe it's a slightly different conversation if you're doing, immediate post-match stuff, to having a day just to let it kind of die down a little bit and think about it. It's a second loss over a long season. We're in April now. They haven't lost away from home all season until the weekend. So you don't want to go too heavy on them. But at the same time, there was lots about that performance that just massively annoyed me.
Just on it, Beth, I think one of the questions, and it's difficult because they do show, I think, an increase in intensity second half, But I do wonder if there was a little bit of a leg shift. You know, they looked strong to me on Wednesday. I thought against Devon, it would have been easy a couple of times to have folded or to have played a little bit safer. I actually thought they finished the game quite strongly against the Blues. That wasn't there first half against Fulham. It certainly wasn't there after they'd been gifted, not gifted, but the spectacular but unearned opening goal. You know, I was sort of thinking there, all right, lads, let's kick on, big 20 minutes, let's go and win this game, get this one. And they just didn't look like they had that gear in them.
No, they didn't. And I think crucially yesterday, you know, games hinge on momentum, don't they? And I think, you know, every turn, Liverpool just didn't sort of seize the initiative. I think, like you say, they probably didn't deserve to be 1-0 up. Or they didn't start the game particularly well. Canate was sort of conspiring to give Fulham a goal inside, 5 minutes.
It was mad they didn't score then.
Yeah, crazy.
But that was the worst mistake of the lot.
Yeah, and also, you know, there's maybe an argument that there could have been a penalty in there. I actually don't think the Van Dijk one was, but I think Kelleher does clean out, is it Iwobi? Pereira. The ball had already gone at that point, so I understand why that wasn't sort of pulled back. But, you know, they make an almighty mess of it there, and then, you know, it's obviously a great goal from McAllister. And I think then in the 5 minutes after Liverpool's goal, there was a real opportunity there to just sort of take the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think Fulham's heads dropped a little bit. You could hear the Liverpool fans having a little bit of a party, and it just felt like after the week that they'd had, obviously losing to Arsenal, they'd gone out of the FA Cup the previous weekend, it was a chance really to sort of kick them while they were down. Liverpool don't do that. And then Fulham, to their credit, you know, they get back into the game, and then, you know, Liverpool lose their heads. And I think ultimately that game was lost, even though Liverpool weren't great for, you know, the entirety of the first half. That game was lost in 15 minutes, wasn't it? That game, you know, I actually thought Liverpool were quite unlucky in the second half not to get an equaliser. But they just ultimately had left themselves with way too much to do. And, you know, I mean, I know sort of expected goals, I sort of go back and forth on whether I think it's a useful metric or not, because ultimately, however many goals you score is however many goals you score. But I think Fulham's yesterday was 0.79. So, you know, to score 3 goals from that, I mean, first of all, it tells you that maybe the goalie should have done better, which I'm sure we'll get on to later. But also, I think it was almost just one of those days where everything they sort of hit in that first half went in. And sometimes you do just have one of those days. I mean, I think it was only the first time since that Villa game in 2020, the 7-2, where Liverpool went in having conceded 3 goals in the first half. And that had a similar feel. First of all, Liverpool were dreadful defensively that day too, but also it was one of them that everything Villa hit just sort of went in. And so I think for that reason, it's almost easier to take in the sense that you think, just one of those days. It was just a mad 15 minutes. They lost their heads and then it just left themselves with too much to do. But ultimately it is frustrating because if you come away and think, well, Fulham were just amazing and they played some great football and that's how they get the points, fair enough. But Liverpool were sort of the orchestrators of their own downfall, weren't they?
Yeah, it's always frustrating, isn't it, when you just repeatedly shooting yourself in your own foot. And that's what it felt like watching, certainly in that first half, is that I didn't think there was much in the game up until the goal, but then we get the goal. It's a brilliant piece of play from McAllister, not just the shot, but, you know, how he takes it away from their midfield and bursts forward. And it's a lovely goal. And up to then, it had been, you know, fairly even sort of match, not loads of action in either goal. And then you take a big grip on it, and it is interesting how we play it at 1-0. You talk about, you know, how do we have other gears? I'm not sure we're necessarily looking for them. I'm not sure
agree.
We're necessarily looking to push on, and you don't want to criticise the manager too much because it's sort of what you're getting used to. It was a big. I went yesterday. It was a big day for people chatting to you at the Iran about what Liverpool should be doing. Whenever I went for the way, someone was telling me what Liverpool were doing wrong if the game was going on, or had done wrong when I was sort of in the pub later. And there was people saying, "Oh, Jurgen would have made it 2 or 3," and you're like, "Well, yeah, it's also maybe, but he is a different manager and he's having a lot of success." And someone else mentioned Benitez too. He's like, "Oh, he would have just killed that game." And I thought, well, Benitez never won the league. Do you know what I mean? And so he didn't have all the answers. So there's different ways of approaching it, and I think mistakes can just make a fool of you. And you can talk about tactics all you want, but the 3 bad errors for the goals by 3 different defenders. Well, one of them's not really a defender, but he was sort of playing at the back, and there's actually probably multiple mistakes in each one.
Yeah,
you know, the second one, the Robertson pass. In the ground, you're like, what are you trying to do? When you see it back, you can see there is a ball onto Gravenberch, but the way he hits it's so erratic. And then it's actually a really poor header. And then he gets sucked in, and I don't think he needs to be in that position where he is. I think he's just trying to sort out because he's like, oh, fucking hell, just passed to them and then I've done a shit header to make to him. And he just bounds his way over. And if he just stays at left back, I think it's fine. And so, like, but I do sort of get the keenness. But as I say, there was multiple mistakes in each one. And I think when that's happening, you know, you can set up how you like and you can play any sort of tactics you want, really. But if you're gifting them goals, I think it's tough as a manager. And I think that's what happened. And that's not to say that, you know, the manager maybe couldn't have done something different with his team selection or with the subs, because maybe he could have. But they've gone away and they've scored 2 goals, and that should be enough to at least get a point, which I agree with Ian would have been fine. And normally you'd expect to win, you know, getting 2 at Craven Cottage, and they don't. And really, it's because of pretty basic defensive errors from good players.
There's, with them, Beth's right to sort of point out, even at 0-0, the Canate one, it feels like a little bit just sets a tone, Ian. I think all the way through then you can sort of, you know, you can look at everyone in that back line. You wonder if the keeper could do better for the third. Virgil's really poor for the third. I'm sure by his own admission, he would be fine with that sort of assessment. Robertson, as John says, repeatedly for the second. Ricochets off Jones, I think Konate's not very good for the opener for their first goal either. I think Konate doesn't know where he is at key moments there and has panicked a bit too much. And as I say, it then ricochets off Jones. I think the first finish is pretty emphatic and pretty irresistible from Sessegnon. I'm less convinced by, you know, matters on the other 2, as John says, with Robertson. But the key part about this is that it's a dressing room where they're all looking around at each other at half time. There's a lot of culpable boys in there. It's not one player having a stinker. It was a catalogue of errors.
Yeah, I think, and you know, just to John's point there, you know, you can talk about selection and obviously different tactics and stuff, but I think as footballers and players, they've got to be taking responsibility there. I mean, they are just some of the most basic errors and mistakes you will ever see from players who, quite frankly, should know better. You know, the captain, again, I thought he's had an outstanding season, but it's another poor performance on the back of a really poor first half against Everton, I thought. Now, he puts a lot of that right second half against Everton, and he's really good. But
similar forwards as well.
I think there are times when, because you look at Virgil and he is so, you know, most of the time unbelievable and so silky and so cool. But if someone wants to rough him up, they do get a little bit of joy, I think, sometimes for maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, just whilst he gets the grips with it a little bit. You know, Konate, I think you're right, that sets a bit of a tone. There was a couple of things that just happened where, you know, Szoboszlai's playing blind balls. He must have played about 3 or 4 blind balls.
Was it really poor first half?
In the first 20 to get
hard at half time. I was surprised.
And I'm thinking, lad, stop doing that. You've done it twice now and it hasn't come off. Like, just get hold of it and play the simple pass and we go from there. But that just kind of seemed to flow through the team, but it was really, really poor mistakes. And you can look at the goalkeeper for probably the third one. I think the other 2, listen, one's a deflection and it's a really good finish for the first one. But the third one, you're probably thinking, yeah, the normal fella would save that. But, you know, there's a problem there. You know, I think I saw a stat yesterday where over the course of the last 2 seasons, you know, your number 1 has only played 14 times more than your number 2. That's a problem. That is a problem. And Liverpool are obviously looking to address it. But as good as Ali is, that does present a massive problem. If you're missing him that often, and listen, it's a head injury, and Liverpool have got to follow protocols to get all that. But they have got a problem in that area where the best one in the world does not make as many appearances as you want him to. But listen, that can happen. And there's bigger things going on than the goalkeeper yesterday. Let's be clear. And then I just thought Liverpool, you know, they get a foothold in the game, as has been mentioned, and you just think, what should happen now is they should just take control of the game and not really give Fulham a sniff, but they give them loads and loads of encouragement, and then before you know it, it's 1-1, then 2-1. And as Beth said, Liverpool probably do enough on chances created to scrape a point, but it probably would have felt still a little bit harsh on Fulham, because you get yourself 3-1 up against the champions-elect. You probably feel like you've done enough to win the game. And listen, I've got no complaints. It ends up being 3-2, and they probably deserve that, because sometimes if you just give yourself that much to do, then guess what? You are going to be on the end of one.
I think the interesting part in the round, Beth, of thinking about where we end up in the match, 3-2, is I don't think Fulham make any mistakes. I think both of Liverpool's goals are well done, well worked. In the case of one, well struck. In the case of the, you know, I think there might be a little bit, if you were to do a bit of a, you know, a frame by frame analysis, could the Fulham midfielder be a bit stronger with Gravenberch for the opener, who then gets it through to McAllister. Once McAllister's away, he's away. They've got to deal with what's in front of them. You know, you can do a little bit of, maybe you could do that, but the point being is that there's no gifts.
No.
Fulham do not make anything easy for Liverpool all the way through the match, and they actually, I think, they're excellent last 10-15. When other sides will begin to collapse in on themselves and capitulate, they stand really, really firm. I was genuinely impressed with them, and that's a theme the manager's been putting all season, which is the quality of the opposition, and they showed it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you say, they did so well after that, because I think as soon as Diaz makes it 3-2, there's about 5 minutes after that where it feels like a goal's coming. It feels like it's inevitable, not only that Liverpool are going to go on and get an equaliser, but quite possibly that they could go on and win it. And I think then after that, what Fulham do really, really well is, like you say, they just sort of take the sting out of Liverpool's tail, and they were quite good at breaking it up, getting it up the pitch, winning free kicks and throw-ins, and just sort of disrupting Liverpool's momentum. I mean, Liverpool were a little bit unlucky. That Harvey Elliott one, he strikes that really, really well. He's really unlucky that doesn't go in. And then I can't remember what minute that was, but there'd still have been time to maybe go on and get a winner. And,
it's before stoppage time.
Yeah.
Because the two chances to come in stoppage time is the other Elliott one and the Chiesa one.
Yeah.
It's before that.
Yeah, so you think if he gets that, then I'd probably back Liverpool to go on and get a winner there. But Fulham just sort of, they ride the luck a little bit, but also, like you say, they just defended really, really well. The goalkeeper takes the pressure off them. I mean, the couple of saves he made in stoppage time, Liverpool, they were half chances really, weren't they? And they weren't struck particularly brilliantly, but still he doesn't sort of flap at any of them. And I think that is key. I think ultimately, you can analyse and dissect things however much you want, but like you say, I think it was just a case of Liverpool gifted them goals and Fulham didn't do the same to Liverpool.
They have a good first 10. Fulham, John, I actually don't think the game's just sort of flopping around. For the next 13 minutes, Liverpool score a goal. Said before about whether or not they could go on and push a little bit more. After it goes 1-1, I think Fulham do a really good job of making it hard for Liverpool. I think one of the things that Robertson's trying to do for the goal that becomes the second is help Liverpool play to a man in space, because I thought Liverpool's playing out when they were being pressed by Fulham was really poor, like concerningly so. They didn't have a long out ball, they didn't have a medium out ball, they didn't have a short out ball. It's not the first time this season where I felt as though an opposition's been able to really press and squeeze Liverpool, and they haven't had a ton of answers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you look at the goal, I actually think Kelleher, you could criticise him a bit for the third goal, and I get it, he doesn't look well sort of set, but I actually thought his all-round goalkeeping in the game was pretty good. I thought his distribution was good, and I thought he was trying to get us going, and then it always seemed to stop him. Even for the second, Virgil's, he's a bit slow to get it to Robbo, and then it's a bit behind him as well, so he's sort of got to check and then put it from his right foot into his left. And listen, that's no excuse for the pass, but it just sort of rushes it a little bit and just sort of condenses everyone round. And there was just little things like that all day, really, where I was thinking, if you just move it quicker, it'll be slightly easier for the person you're passing to, because, we were sort of getting all bunched by the fact that everything we was doing was just a little bit slow. And like you said, passes just sort of a little bit behind. And when you look at what Robertson's trying to do, actually, if he hits Gravenberg's off. So Gravenberg's got clear ground in front of him. And so I could see in that moment sort of what he's trying to do. I accept that, it's a risky pass, across your box, because if it goes wrong, and it did go wrong, then, you're sort of in trouble. But I think they all backed themselves to do the slightly difficult and listen.
They hadn't been playing out well, that's why I'm fine with it. They hadn't been playing out well, Dom. So the idea they were going to go to a lad in space in that moment, I'm fine with the decision. It's obviously the execution. But in general, they've just got to play out better. Yeah,
but he could have carried that 30 yards. It is just a sort of execution. But like I say, and it was funny because Virgil against Everton, he was the one who was trying to get us going. Especially early in that game, he was really, he had his defensive issues, but on the ball, he was at one point he was really going into Canati, going quicker, move the ball quicker. And so it's interesting. It was sort of a different approach in this, but I think it just summed up a little bit of the first half, where it's just a bit lethargic. It's a bit like, there's not quite that intensity there, and when that drops, good players, which there are plenty of in this league, that's what people tell you, can punish you, and that's I guess a lesson for them if they needed it.
I think they get to the point, Ian, where I don't think they graded 2-1. I mean, I could do this all the way through the half. I don't think they graded 2-1, because I think they should be trying to get in 2-1. The things have happened to them now. I don't think it is a case of trying to turn around and get back to 2-2. I don't think they're managing it that well at 2-1, which is ironic, because first and foremost, one of my criticisms is I think they're trying to do a bit too much management at times at the minute when they're one goal ahead. And also, in amongst all of that, I think that they've shown that they can actually manage really, really well But they're now dealing with, unlike a Fulham, I think, as I say, felt a bit lackadaisical around the 17th minute. Fulham are now absolutely up there. And that's one of the difficulties of going away from home with players of this quality, is that they suddenly all back themselves. And I think the Mooney's goal is a really good example of it's all just a bit scruffy, but he just decides, I'm going to try and do something boss here.
It's the touch is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like that first touch to go into his path is unreal. Like, you can talk about defensively and like he will, but like, fucking hell, do you know what I mean? And then it's perfect with his knee, then he's sort of out. And so it is great centre forward play, just dreadful defending.
But I think this is the point, though, is that then this is back to the encouragement point, is that at that point he's 2-1 up in the game. He feels great. He feels like the game plan's working. Fucking I'll try this.
Yeah.
And it comes off, and guess what? He's a brilliant footballer, because so many of them are in this league. And that is almost what Liverpool ends up being up against. I think there's a few times Fulham counter really well second half, and there's a number of good performances they end up with. The manager's been at pains over and over again all season to say the quality in this league's unbelievable. And you can take sort of 8 or 9 incidents from that game against us and go, well, he's not lying, is he?
No, I mean, the quality of the league, it's there for everyone to see. And I think that puts Fulham up to 8th. Now, I think going into the weekend, most people would have looked at Fulham and gone, there's probably just 1 or 2 too many bodies to climb over. Now you look at the league and you think, hang on a second, if they put a little bit of a run together the last 7 games,
They would have played first and second.
Yeah, none of the top 5 won it.
Exactly, none of the top 5 won. And you know, again, that says something about the quality of the league and stuff in terms of what those mid-table teams can do to you. If you go into a game just 5, 10, 15% off it, you can get punished. And I think to then try and galvanise, if you've got yourself into a bit of a mode where you are just offered a little bit, I think it's really difficult until the reset at half time to sometimes just get going again. And I think you see that, and it just plays out in 1 or 2 performances. You know, as I said before, Virgil's been outstanding for the majority of the season. You know, you think him and Salah at times have really carried Liverpool at different moments in different parts of the season. But he will look back at that and just think, yes, it's a great goal, but 2 things can be true at the same time. It is really, really poor defending, and he'll be massively disappointed. But as I say, I think a lot of it just is how we start, and some of it is from Canate, and just that setting of the tone very early on. It just looked ever so scrappy and ever so sloppy. And then, yes, they get a goal up, and you think, okay, found ourselves here. Just everyone just stay kind of calm, cool and collected, and we go from there. But credit to Fulham. They grow into the game. Yes, they get the encouragement, but they have got really good footballers. Iwobi's having a really, really good season. There's Pereira in there as well. All of a sudden, Session's found himself back in the team, gets a great goal. And at the back, they had 2 lads who were happy to kind of, you know, play football at times, but also not afraid to mix it as well.
Second half, Beth, it's fair to describe, I think, Diaz, Bradley and Elliott as all being bright when they came on. I also think that Jones and McAllister have really good second halves. Jones, when he gets moved from right back, I thought he was great getting Liverpool on the front foot, great at linking play, finding space for people. It was good, I thought, you know, to accentuate a positive. There's 5 strong performances there that I think showed Liverpool's ability to deal with what Fulham were doing up until about the 80th minute mark. I thought that Liverpool were good in that period with those players.
Yeah, I mean, I was slightly baffled that Slot didn't make any changes at half time. I think I'd have changed 5 if I'd have been the manager, but he obviously must have.
Lady Gutman.
Yeah, definitely. But I would have just thrown so much spaghetti at the wall and just seen what sticks. But
Brady Gibbons.
Yeah. But he obviously, you know, probably said to them, look, you know, you've made this mess, go and get yourselves out of it. And to be fair, I actually think, you know, you mentioned the sort of 4 or 5 really strong performers. I think Liverpool on the whole do pretty well in the second half. You know, I can't think of too many clear chances that Fulham actually have in that second half. There's the one from Harrison Reed, which is a really good save by Kelleher, to be fair. But beyond that, I don't think they necessarily created a lot. I think they managed the game well, certainly late on, but you know, they didn't seem to hurt Liverpool too much. You think of the clear chances Liverpool created. I mean, Jota should have scored. It was a good save by Leno, but you know, Jota should have scored there. The Elliott one that hits the bar, obviously the Diaz one that goes in. They create sort of 4, 5, 6, either very good or half decent chances. Without conceding too many big ones. So I think, you know, in a half of football away to Fulham, that's a decent second half performance. But you know, I think it's become a little bit more of a hallmark in recent months. It just sort of seems like Liverpool are a second half team. They were under Klopp, weren't they? Really, realistically, the amount of times they had to come from behind last season, even. And there's nothing wrong with being. You'd rather be stronger in a second half than a first half, but it would be quite nice if Liverpool could just go out and get 3 goals before half time and just settle it down. And I think the issue with the way that Slot wants Liverpool to play, and listen, his method has worked brilliantly all season, so I'm not being too critical of him, but he is all about control and managing the game, and I still think that Liverpool are at the best when they're 100 miles per hour. Some of the best moments, some of the best goals this season, particularly in the first half of the season, came on the transition, came when they were, the 3, 4, 5 players breaking, and I just don't think we've maybe seen quite enough of that in the last few weeks, and there has been at times, even against Everton, it just was too slow, and they just sort of knock it around the back, and then it gets to a point where, the opposition have everybody back, and it's so hard to find a breakthrough. So, I think in the rounds, I think Liverpool did pretty well in the second half yesterday, but they just left themselves with too much to do.
Yeah, Diaz is great when he comes on, and then I guess then you ask questions, because I thought he was man of the match against Everton, and so you think, well, should he have kept him in? But I think, by and large, I think most people have the opinion that the manager should have rotated more throughout the season. That's maybe one criticism. One of few that you would have is maybe he should have rotated a little bit more. So I don't think you can say that. I then criticise him where he does look to sort of freshen it up a little bit. Diaz was man of the match in the week, but it's a huge shift, and it's actually a position where he's probably felt most comfortable rotating.
Yeah.
And it's probably a little bit of a sign that maybe he would rotate more if he had two in the same position who he felt equally comfortable with. I think he likes both Diaz and Gakpo in different ways and maybe at different times. And so they're the two that, if you look back, he's probably swapped in and out more than certainly sort of other positions where the other players have just had runs of games and games. It's interesting in the early in the season, for example, he swaps Robertson and Chimikas a lot, and now he's just going Robbo regardless. And so I think I won't criticise him too much for that sort of move, really, because I think I'd like more freshness over the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, and Gakpo does okay, but then Diaz is a real live wire when he comes on. He's brilliant. He obviously gets the goal, but he's really good in loads of moments. So the way he's scrapping, the impetus, and I thought Bradley made a huge difference as well. Obviously, they combine for the second, but I think generally speaking, you see the difference.
Well, I think, John, I think one of the things that you get from Diaz, Bradley and Elliott is they're all really vertical. They're all the time really, really vertical. And I thought that all three of them showed that when they came on. It's the best point, really, that it's still a team, I think, which I think this is the case of all football teams, so you got to be careful because you just sound like a wally. But I'm of the view I just prefer it when I do prefer watching the football when it is vertical, when it is dynamic. It's more of a laugh. The flip side of that is, again, we are where we are for a reason. We've shown greater control, and let's be clear, a lot. And it's interesting, even a game like this one, and even Nottingham Forest, where we don't win. Last season we conceded a lot of early goals. That's broadly been eradicated by Paris Saint-Germain, but then they're a really good side. There's not been a lot of that sort of thing either. So you've got to be careful in that. There's different things that are going on. But I just thought when Diaz, Bradley, and Elliott were on, it always constantly felt as though the ball was moving the right way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and the opposition, you talk about what you want to watch. You've got to think about what the opposition don't want as well. And say what you want about them three, but when you're playing against them, you're in a game. Do you know what I mean? Like Harvey Elliott always comes on and he's in it straight away. It might not always sort of work out for him, but he's always in the game. He's always pushing. Like Beth said before, he hits the bar sort of late. He has the other chance as well. He's always probing. He's always trying to sort of make things happen. And all three of them are scrappers as well. And if it's not going quite well for you, then throwing one of them on's sort of no bad thing, really, because they will kitchen sink it a bit. I think the Bradley one's brilliant, and I think with the positions that he's able to take up on the pitch, I still think he's damned a little bit by some of our fan base at the moment. When talk about, he's a solid right back and stuff like that. I think he's loads much more than that. I think you can tell he plays in midfield for Northern Ireland, because that's a midfield run, the what he's making. And so he's becoming a lot more versatile. I think he can overlap. I think he can underlap as well, and you're seeing it. And I think Salah really enjoys playing with him. And to be honest with you, I wasn't thrilled when we went to a 3, because I thought, we just took Conor Bradley out the game. And I think that was I
thought we took Robertson out the game as well. I thought Robertson was actually imposing himself on the other side.
Yeah.
But I think it also broke out. I mean, I think the manager, I think that he's got the subs about right. And let's be clear, the Fulham manager does 2 around 80. So you don't, and then he does Robertson on 82. So you don't really get the sense of it. And he goes to a back 5 of it, the Fulham manager. So maybe he had a bit of a plan and we thought we were countering it. But I actually thought at that point, our build-up was great.
Yeah.
And we were building up into areas brilliantly. And then when we went to a 3, we just basically took one more build-up option out. And it was like Fulham felt they could be a bit bolder to try and block the lanes. I thought it wasn't so much what was happening when we get into the final third. We stopped getting there. I think with that sub.
Well, we couldn't seem to decide who was playing where, and they were taking it in turns to space sort of wide on the right. You get a bit of Elliott there, a bit of Salah or whatever, but it just seemed to be like a bit of all, get as many players on the pitch, but it ends up sort of being a bit of nothing really. I wasn't crazy about that last sub. I was pleased to see Chiesa come on because I thought he'd make an impact, but Ala took Salah off, if I'm honest, and I don't think he will, and I think that's an interesting thing. And I feel like I'm just bashing the manager today. I don't even know if it is a criticism because it's him who's got to manage him. So I could sit here and say you should have took Salah off, and he might go, yeah, but you haven't got to fucking deal with him tomorrow morning. Do you know what I mean? I think he's generally managed Salah really well. He can look at how the output he's got out of him and go and say, he's had a fantastic season for me. And last year he ends up falling out with the manager. So what would you rather? It is more complicated, but I don't think he wants to take him off, no matter how poorly he's playing. And I think we'd have been better had he done that in that situation, because I think we've had a better balance as a team.
Been a long time since he's had a good game.
Yeah, I'll come to Salah in a minute. Just on the manager and the changing of kind of Diaz for Gakpo, there's a lot of chat about like he should be rotating more, and I think he probably should have over the course of the season, but then he does it. And people are saying, well, he should have played Diaz. And I was like, well, I've taken out a lad who, let's be clear, Diaz was great against Everton, but he's not exactly full of goals and assists. And he's put another lad in who's comparable in terms of, those kind of, those metrics and stuff. And Gakpo's in really, really good form.
I think Gakpo plays quite well as well.
I think he does all right. He's the best of the three. I think he is. So, yes, Diaz definitely comes on and impacts the game. So I can understand why people end up landing where they land. But, the manager's tried to do a little bit of rotation there. Now, maybe he could have done a little bit more, absolutely. I think over the course of the season, I would have liked to have seen more of Elliott. I would also, for me, on the subs, I probably would have done Chiesa before Nunes, if I'm being really honest. I'd have done Chiesa through the middle. And I think the little bits you've seen of Chiesa recently leads me to think that there is a player in there. We all know that. He's achieved great things away from and before he got to Liverpool. But I just think, in terms of just getting shots off and playing with a bit of purpose, he just looks far more at it than Nunes. Now, I know Nunes has had some big moments this season, you think of Brentford, but for every one of those, there's 7 or 8 games where nothing really happens. And I just find him a really tough watch, John, if I'm being honest, a lot of the time. And he's making poor decisions. And listen, it's never easy coming into a game, so I get that. But I just think he could have done the Chiesa thing a little bit earlier. On the Salah points, and I mentioned this on the pre-match warm-up show going into the weekend, I don't think he's played well since City away. Which is 7 games ago now, scores that day. He's unbelievable that day, by the way. He's a joke. He's just playing a different game, a different level. No one can get near him.
It's all right against Newcastle at home, isn't he?
I think he's okay, but I think Lewis Hall plays him really well. He has a good first 10 minutes. Salah probably should get a penalty, but I think Lewis Hall's very good on the night. I think Salah was okay on the night, but I don't think it was a great performance. And then there's the 2 games against PSG. There's the League Cup final and there's the game against Everton. He scores 2 pens against Southampton, but isn't great that day. I think you have to say, he has been fasting through March. There was the Ramadan thing. That's got to have some kind of impact because you are fueling your body in a totally different way than normal. So I think you've got to put that into the conversation somewhere. I don't know how that's affected him, but he will know. Liverpool's back team will know. The manager will know, and they're still playing him. So broadly, it must be okay, but I'm sure it's had some impact. But yeah, there's no doubt he's not quite at the level he's been at. It is always important to say, Liverpool would not be where they are without Mohamed Salah this season. That is absolutely facts. But if you are the best player, and he probably is, and some people won't like this, but if you are the best paid player, guess what? People are going to look to you when there's a need for someone to step up and be counted. And he often does do that.
Yeah.
But people will look at it and say, if you're on 350, 400 grand a week, then more often than not, we expect you to come to the party. And to be fair to Salah, more often than not, he does. But I think it is 6 or 7 games now where it's a little bit of a worry. No, I can totally get on board with what you're saying, John. There probably are times when he could come off. And I think if Liverpool are going to keep Mohamed Salah, he's going to have to get his head round that he is going to have to come off in certain games, because I think you're going to see the best of him. The age he's getting to, there are times when maybe he doesn't start games, or when you've got to take him off on 60 and protect him a little bit so he's fit and firing towards the back end of the season, because this has been a little bit of a pattern where in certain seasons you just see him maybe tail off ever so slightly. So listen, he's good enough to come back against West Ham and score a hat-trick. Let's be clear. So that could easily happen. And it wasn't just him yesterday. I think across the board, there's not many players who you can look at and say they had a good game.
I want to come on to him and Jota together with John as well, with the conversation about an outball. But before that, Beth, I want to just bring up, I think there's a tiny little bit of a thing where everyone's played everyone once at this point of a season. Everyone's got the learning from that. And I don't think it's just as simple as how well Salah doing. I think sides have in the last 6-8 weeks, even when, for instance, I think he's brilliant at Bournemouth, but I thought Bournemouth had a really clear Salah plan. And this is how we're going to deal with Salah. And we're going to bend this way a little bit. We're going to ask this question. We're going to ask this question here. I wondered if there's a teeny little bit of a thing where everyone's now got the data of what it is Liverpool have been doing with Salah to get him as involved in the game. And I also think Fulham played him quite well at Anfield earlier in the season as well, between Robinson, Iwobi and Bassi. They do all right then. So when he was flying back in December, Fulham do well that day. So I think it's difficult, isn't it, to separate off what's the performance, what's the overall Liverpool performance, what are the opposition doing in this sort of run. But it is just worth emphasising he really hasn't played well. I would say he does play well against Newcastle. I think he gives Hull a torrid time and holds as well. But I take Ian's point, he might be right, I might be wrong. But regardless, me and Ian are both saying end of February. And that's the key question here. I don't think he's played well since end of February.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so low to criticise Mo Salah because Liverpool would not be in the position that they were in without him. You know, he has at times dragged Liverpool to winning games. And he has been, you know, undisputed the player of the season. He should be the PFA player of the season, the football. I'm sure he probably will be. And I think if one player has, you know, a bit of credit in the bank with Liverpool having a bit of a drop off the last few weeks, it is him. That said, you know, I wouldn't have been averse to him going off yesterday. Like John said, I think, you know, take him off 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes before the end and bring on Chiesa for him or move Elliott to the right-hand side. You know, he wasn't at it yesterday and he hasn't been at it for a little while. And the concerning thing is that it's not the first time that he's had a dip at this time of the season. Now, I think last year was a bit of a special case because he had that bad injury, didn't he? And I just don't think he ever fully recovered from that. But I remember even in I think it was his second season, 18-19, when Liverpool obviously pushed Manchester City really close and they go away to Old Trafford. I think it's a 0-0. It's a really drab game. But I think he could have got his 50th Premier League goal for Liverpool. And I remember watching an interview before it and it was all this talk about, you know, he's going to get the 50th Premier League goal. And he goes on a run for like it takes him about 10 games to get this 50th.
Well, he doesn't score between February and when they play Southampton in 2019.
Yes.
And he scores in February. He doesn't score another goal for Liverpool until about the 6th of April.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, it's not the first time that he's got to I mean, it was only this time last season people were saying sell him. And then, you know, obviously he goes and does what he does in the first half of the season. And, you know, I've had quite a few debates with my dad. Dad, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I'm gonna expose you here. But he loves Salah, by the way. But the last few weeks, he's been really sort of on his back a little bit. And I've sort of said to him, like, I understand the manager's point of keeping him on because if there's one player who can have a terrible game and still produce something, it is him.
Yeah.
And you're not telling me there's a single fullback in this league who, regardless of how well they've played against him, thinks when he goes off, I wish he'd have stayed on. Do you know what, like
maybe the Paris Saint-Germain one because Elliott comes on and scores straight away, doesn't he? And that was the interesting one for me. It is like, well, you've actually done it in a big game when it's worked, and then since then, I mean, he hooks him. He takes him off about 91 against Everton, doesn't he? It's haptics fuming. I'm like, we're just playing out the game here, and so he has done it and it's worked, and so that's where I got a bit frustrated and think, you know, you've shown you can, but I also take your point, like, you know, how often would Guardiola take Messi off? Do you know what I mean? How often was Zidane take Ronaldo off? And he is that, you know, close to that level. He's not them two are two of the top 5 players of all time, maybe even top 3. So he's not quite at that level. But, you know, I do get that, you know, you're the manager and the temptation is to keep your best players on. But I just think if it upsets the whole way you're playing and where you're having success, it just doesn't feel quite worth it for me.
No, and I mean, he should have got an assist yesterday, really, shouldn't he? It was a nice bit of play. He plays in
The Jota one.
yeah. So Yeah, I think it is such a difficult situation. I wouldn't like to manage Mohamed Salah because I bet you he has a right cob on when he's, you know, the day after he's been taken off. So I do have a bit of sympathy, but equally, you know, you can't, as a manager, you can't be held to ransom by one player. And I think we saw last season, didn't we? He did have a falling out with Klopp toward the end of the season. I think probably because he wasn't being played as much as he'd like to. But yeah, I don't know. But he's Mo Salah, and
The subs helped him, I thought. Bradley Elliott, I think that's when he probably had his best spell in the game, is when
We're just having a right
they
back.
were on the
He's proper right back sort of
I
video.
think so. You know, if he was here, he may say, you know, it's been very choppy and changey, kind of in terms of who's supporting him and backing him up and stuff. So I think he definitely does have his best spell when they come on.
And also, Szoboszlai's not been playing particularly well the last few weeks, and he's not had a conventional right back behind him. So that can't, if the whole right hand side isn't playing well / isn't what you're used to playing with, you know, that's going to disrupt his rhythm. It's not like he's playing with Trent, who's playing amazingly well, and then playing with Szoboszlai, who's playing as he was a couple of months ago. He's not probably being helped by that either.
What didn't help, I thought, first half around not just Salah, because I think it's Salah and Jota. I think away from home in particular, because it very rarely happens the converse. I think when the game isn't going well for you, and games tend to go well for us at Anfield, John, but I think when the game isn't going well for you, I feel as though him and Jota together just don't offer that much of an outball. Jota's does a lot of really horrible graft for everyone in the team, and you get to see it on a couple of occasions. But he doesn't offer feet all the time, or even chest all the time, like a different style of centre forward. He's there to be that sort of footballer who lurks around the final third area. Salah is not able to offer the same outball and pin a side back as he used to. He's still got pace over 5-10 yards, but the idea, I think, sides feel comfortable giving him 40-50 yards now. And so you end up in a situation where, you know, I think Gakpo plays quite well for 55 minutes against Castagna, but there's no outball. There's no outball coming into midfield. I don't think Szoboszlai, I thought he was poor yesterday, frankly. And that's my frustration watching it. Forget the overall, where's the output? There's just times in a football match where when things aren't going that well for you and the opposition are pressing you really, really high, you could just do with scaring them a bit. And I don't think anyone did first half.
Yeah, or sort of tearing them around or giving them something to think about. It's funny with Salah, isn't it? Because, you know, when you think about him in your head, he's like this brilliant individual player, and so much of his goals in that first season, you know, was that. But actually, he's developed into a player that maybe always was a player who just loves combination play. And, you know, the early balls from Trent, I think he really misses, and I think he just goes and he knows he's going to get them. But I think he works really well with Bradley as well. I think he loves playing with Bradley. I think he
loves playing with Elliott.
Yeah, loves playing with Elliott, was enjoying playing with Szoboszlai for a while, has talked about how much he enjoys playing with Núñez. He was like, he's going to laugh now, but I love playing with him. And because I think he just likes, you know, clicking into those moments and having that certainty. And I think at the moment he doesn't really feel like he's got that. So he's not quite sure almost where to be, and he's second guessing himself a lot.
John, I think Núñez, for all, I thought he was crap when he came on yesterday. He was doing me as
he couldn't get in there.
But I mean, he pulls left for the one that Diaz finally scores for. But yeah, take the general point. But I think Núñez creates space for him. I think Núñez creates space for them. And I think that the big, if you want to just say what was one of Liverpool's issues from the point it goes 1-1, but there was no space. And I understand. Listen, I probably would have picked Jota because I think we've all got on our heads. Jota's quite a streaky player. He scored a good goal. Another one will be on its way. But I just sort of wonder whether or not, you know, what I find difficult is I think you need that idea of who's going to create space for everyone else. And I think if you're going to play Salah, you can think about who's going to do with a lot of Salah's work off the ball, but you've also got to think about how we're going to create the space for him to play. And I think all the way through that first half, you know, you end up with Gakpo, who, as I say, I thought he does well, but Diaz just created more space and comes feet more often. You don't go with Núñez through the middle, which I understand, but you could go with Diaz through the middle, or you could do something else. Do you know what I mean? You just end up in a situation where no one's creating space for each other. And that is, I think that's been one of my concerns about the last sort of 6 weeks of Liverpool football, is how are you pushing the opposition back? How are you scaring people away from home? And how are we creating space for the best players again?
We're not attacking in any fluid sense, and I think that's what we're saying. There hasn't been many games recently where you thought, for 10 minutes we were pulling them apart all over the place, and you were making it uncomfortable. They're still getting goals, and that's, you know, the interesting thing, and that's as much down to, you know, individual moments and great individual play rather than
like Jota's against Everton.
Yeah, exactly, and things like that. But it doesn't really feel like we're having 10, 15 minutes at the moment where we're really, knocking against the door. You think, oh, it's coming here, it's coming a goal, and then it sort of comes. And, why that is it tiredness? Is it just form goes up in different parts of the
You're going to have something to defend, which is the lead, if you know what I mean, the lead.
Yeah, quite what that is. But, it'd be nice for them to figure out an answer for it, and whether that's slightly different personnel. I would be picking Elliott a bit more for those reasons. If you're talking about getting the best out of your best players, Salah, I say to him, who do you want to play with? You know what I mean? Like, you don't let him quite pick the team. I've just said you won't take him off, and now I'm not saying to pick the team. But we're just getting that feedback from someone. Who do you think's going to get more out of you at the moment? Because if he says play Harvey Elliott there, I've got great sort of link up with me. Well, it's not like Sabostai's playing brilliant at the moment, so sort of give him a go if he goes, do you know what, just pick Darwin, and we'll just sort of do well together. The person who's got the shirt isn't making this brilliant argument, and so I think looking to build it a little bit more around your best player might get a little bit out of them, but I don't know. I think having a proper right back come back in will make a big difference, and I think you could saw that straight away from Bradley. Like I said, I was frustrated that he was then almost pushed out of it, but he'll start next week against West Ham, and he'll make a massive difference.
So just one other thing though, John, is at this point, it is just now about hitting the tape, if you know what I mean. We could talk about big things that you might want to be different for Liverpool. I think we've almost, some of these conversations, I think at the minute they're quite interesting, because there's some stuff that I think you just got to put in a box, which is pre-season. Some stuff that you've just got to sort of say, it would be great to get.
And it'll be a different team.
It'd be great to get that fixed now, lads, but there's some stuff that is just pre-season, because the big picture is getting over the line now. We've come this far, it's getting over the line, and I don't think there'll be massive changes anywhere until they are over the line.
No, and I think that's fair, but I think if I'm thinking about the best way to beat West Ham, it's by scaring them, basically, and I think we're giving teams hope at the moment, and we're letting teams into the game just because we're not scaring them enough. And I think you saw that a little bit against Fulham when, like you say, they start sort of trying things because they get the tails up a little bit. And so I think if we could just, I'll take a 1-0 against West Ham, a penalty, and I'll take a 1-0 at Leicester from an own goal. That is fine. The big prize is there, but at the same time, I think they're more likely to beat West Ham by having 10, 15 minutes in that first half where they're just pulling them all over the place in West Ham. I think we can't be fucking arsed with this.
All right, coming up now, John Gibbons talking to Simon Bowers.
It is John Gibbons, and I'm joined in the studio again. Can't keep away. Simon Bowers, for those who didn't see him last time, he's a GP in the city. He's involved in the LFC Foundation in terms of advising on health matters, and a huge Liverpool supporter.
Great to be back, John.
Nice to have you. We're going to talk a little bit more generally this time about our own health and what little things that we can do, because last time, we were quite big picture and we talked about the work of the foundation, but I think, well, it was your idea, and I agree. I think for a lot of us, we do want to be healthier, but we're not sure what small differences that we can make, or what small changes that we can make that are going to have the impact. And I think all of us can be a bit guilty sometimes of thinking, it's all or nothing. Like, I'm going to go on a massive diet and cut everything out, no booze, run every day, and then you fail because it's hard, and then you pack in. And so I think it's good to have a little chat about things that we can do around our lives, things that we can do around families, around work, around going the match and wanting to enjoy that and wanting to sort of keep hold of that. So that's what we're going to do today, if that's all right with you.
Great stuff, yeah, like a clinic. Into that.
So yeah, we'll call it the Liverpool Supporters Guide to Staying Well. So, I guess what is wellness, first of all, because, it could be a broad term, but for you, when you're thinking about, a person's wellness, what kind of things are you thinking about?
So there's all kinds of official definitions of this, John, but I guess most of the people I speak to in my practice, and most of the people who ask me questions at parties or social events or whatever, you've got to break it down to really, really simple language, because as you just said, it's not easy. Modern life, it's not easy to stay well. If you think we're the same animal that climbed out the trees hundreds of thousands of years ago, but life has changed immeasurably. So it is really, really difficult to find time to do the right things. So for me, wellness is an ability to do the things you want to do in your life, be it professionally, personally, with your family, socially, without that being impacted by feeling unwell or putting yourself at risk of developing an illness. So I guess the advice I'm going to give today when we're chatting is for those people who currently don't have a long-term condition. So some of the stuff I'm going to say might surprise some of the viewers and listeners in terms of some ways that you can make a change that's quite easy.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting watching this and you already have high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, something like that, any changes that you make, it's best talking it over with somebody in the NHS, your practice nurse, your GP, any specialist that you're in touch with. What I'm trying to do is prevent the next round of ill health. So we've got an absolute tidal wave of diabetes coming in this country, and any part of the world where you've got poor health outcomes and you've got rising levels of obesity, they're the ones that are going to be hit hardest, and that includes L4 where the ground is, and the city region in the whole. So the advice I'm giving is for those of us that are currently well and want to live the rest of our lives staying well.
Before we get on to that, how frustrated do you get with some of the stuff that you see out there then? Because it feels like, you know, there's often fads, there's fad diets, oh, this is the way to sort of lose weight, oh, this is the way to get fit. You know, I saw, it was a big thing, 10,000 steps a day, and then it transpired that was from a company whose interest it was and things like that. You must get frustrated as someone who works in health at some of these things that you see that are often around making money.
Yeah, 100%. And my frustration goes from mild regret to absolute rage, where she makes me turn the telly off. But as doctors, we are taught, and certainly as NHS doctors, because obviously it's a public service, we're taught that every bit of advice we give to individual patients has to be backed up by robust evidence. So, I mean, the one that winds me up is people slavishly drinking 3 or 4 litres of water a day whilst then eating the wrong things. Because actually, we've got 2 wonderful organs in our body called the kidneys that will sort out your water balance dead easy. And when you're thirsty, that's your kidneys telling you, go and have a drink. And so taking little bits of stuff you've read online or stuff that the latest influencer is doing doesn't ever really lead to positive health benefit and can sometimes lead to harm, which is why I sometimes, if I had a cat, kick the cat.
So what can we do then? What little things? Because I think if I had to talk about myself, there's a lot of our listeners and viewers are people like me, you know, and Neil and stuff like that. And if I think about my life for a minute, I've got 2 kids. They take up a lot of my time. They're 5 and they're 3. So in the morning, I'm getting them ready. And then I'm rushing into work. I drive in and I park downstairs, which is brilliantly convenient. But steps-wise, it isn't sort of great. We've got the lovely Peloton bike, which I'll try and jump on every now and again. But I'm always thinking here, I'm a race against time because I need to leave at 5:15 because I need to get my daughter from nursery. And then I get home, get them to kids. And then it's like me and my wife argue about who's going to cook tea. And then we'll lie down there watching something that's easy to watch on the telly. And then we'll go to bed and we'll do it all again. Is that pretty similar to a lot of people how they live, would you say?
Pretty standard for working people. It's pretty standard, and I'm exhausted just listening to it. So for me, we all had Scouse Nan, many of us that were from Liverpool, would use pithy phrases, and the one that I remember is moderation in all things. Now, I've changed that a little bit when I talk to patients. Moderation in all things except ciggies and sunbeds. Because they are 2 things for which there is only poor outcomes.
Yeah.
And I get told all the time, but doctor, the half hour on the sunbed makes me feel good. It does, but it's absolutely more than trebling your risk of getting skin cancer, and that's a disease that kills people. So no amount of skin tint is worth that. Likewise, cigarettes, both tobacco and cannabis, huge amount of risk to physical health. Tobacco kills half of the smokers that take it up. So from that point of view, they're the only 2 where you'll get me wagging a doctor finger. For everything else, number 1, it's where it gets a bit more complicated, but number 2, it's where that moderation in all things can really kick in. So for that, it's making sure that you are staying active. There's a real difference between exercise and activity. So it's possible during a working week to get off the bus 2 stops early, to even do the active transport and get on a bus in the first place. So you've got a bit of a walk. It is possible to use your lunch hour. You know, many of us are employees. That means we're legally entitled to a lunch hour. And it's possible to do that instead of having butties at your desk.
Yeah.
You know, have a walk down for you. You know, you live in one of the most beautiful urban settings. You work in one of the most beautiful urban settings in the country. You can have a mosey around the 3 Graces if you choose to do that. And then even more important is what it is that's in your butty box. So we have over years and years in our country kind of undervalued the importance of the stuff we put in our mouth. Yes, physical activity is really important, and the evidence for physical activity in terms of prevention of long-term conditions, improvement of mental health, and we should talk separately about mental health, and improvement of physical strength is absolutely internationally accepted. It's not actually that good to help you lose weight. to help you lose weight, which is most people in our city's healthcare challenge, it's actually about the stuff you put in your mouth every day. And that's the bit where people do feel it's really difficult, because we are all so busy and fish fingers are really easy to heat up. And then on top of that, you've got the added complication that I talk to patients like this, and I'm talking to a group of people who can't afford to get their shop delivered from Ocado and to be doing, Nigella's squashed avocado stuff, because they're designing a menu for a family on a budget.
Yeah.
So in terms of simple rules for that kind of stuff, there's one that is increasingly developing a really, really strong evidence base, and it's this business about ultra-processed food. Because the fact that we have to generate so much food that tends to be cheaper and tends to be full of sugar and full of salt, or full of chemicals that make you think there's sugar and salt in there, none of which your body is programmed to eat. And so what we're seeing more and more is that the consumption of ultra-processed food is absolutely associated with worst health outcomes. So you're going to get fatter, even if you're on a calorie-controlled diet. If you are consuming ultra-processed food to get to that calorie-controlled diet, you're not going to lose weight. You're going to get fatter and you're going to get sicker. So then people say to me, so what is ultra-processed food? Is this can of Coke ultra-processed food? Yes, it is. Is me bacon butty ultra-processed food? No, it's not. Unless it's one of those ones that comes in a packet wrapped in cellophane. So the best guide I always give to patients is, if you read the instructions and you can't pronounce them, or you've never heard of them, and they're not in your kitchen cupboard, it's probably ultra-processed food, and you should think about trying to eat something else.
Yeah, and it is thinking about these decisions day to day that is going to make a big difference. And listen, I think what we do tomorrow, isn't going to have a massive impact, is it? Do you know what I mean? So you could have, you could eat 4,000 calories tomorrow, or you could eat 1,000, and for one day, that's not going to make a huge thing. But if we can make, I guess, better decisions every day, and just a small thing, then that's what's going to make a big difference.
It's got to be sustainable, John.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the word diets. Diet suggests, we've had Christmas, I've had my holiday, I'm going to eat very little for a while, and the weight's going to come off, or it won't, and then it'll come back on when I have a birthday or a party to go to or whatever.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about lifestyle rather than diet. And it only really hit me, I've been giving advice as a doctor for 25 years, only really hit me when I myself put a bit of weight on over lockdown and was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And I spoke to my doctor and I looked at the tablets and I looked at the options and I did a load of other research, and I ended up thinking, right, I need to adopt a new relationship with food, because it was food. I was running 5K a week. 5K 3 times a week, and still putting weight on, and I couldn't understand it, and I'm a doctor, and I couldn't get my head around it. And so I made a number of changes to my lifestyle. So now I treat things like, the really heavy carbohydrates, the really nice things. So your doorstep toast, your portion of chips, all that kind of stuff. I treat them like I treat alcohol. I still enjoy them, still absolutely look forward to my Friday night chippy, but it's a treat. It's an absolute treat. They don't form part of my weekly routine now. So if I'm treating myself to a steak, I'm having a salad, I'm just saying no to the chips. And you know what? I don't enjoy it any less. And so it's little swaps that you can make. So I've already talked about getting off the bus 2 stops early, walking to work, making sure you ask your boss to fit one of those stand-up desks, making sure any opportunity you get within an hour, you're doing at least one bit of a walk around and you're not sat at your computer or at your workstation or whatever it is you have to do in work. And then making those small changes that you can do forever. And this is where patients get really surprised that there's some stuff that years ago we were told by scientists and government were bad for us. It turns out they're not. Eggs. Eggs are fabulous food, brilliant food. And when patients start listing all the things, so I've already said you can eat steak. I've already said you can have alcohol as long as you're drinking within the sensible recommended limits. Now I'm saying you can have an egg. That's fantastic. Just swerve the toast. Don't have the butty. Just have the egg, because eggs are brilliant, huge sources of energy, can keep you full for hours and hours and hours. Because the other thing that patients tell me is, I can't do that, I'm starving by lunchtime. That's probably because they're having a bowl of breakfast cereal or something, which triggers a response in your body that makes you hungry 3 hours later, because it's a carbohydrate. It's one of those complex things that allows your body to make you hungry again a few hours later. And it's actually the trying to spin it down into all these things with the conversation around ultra-processed food as well. What I say to patients now is, if humans have been eating this thing for more than 150 years, you're probably all right. If they've been eating it for less than 150 years, you probably want to have a think about it.
Yeah. And you use the word the moderation there, and I think that is important for all of us to remember. Really, I've been guilty of a bit of all or nothing, you know, and you do want to be able to go to the match and get your pie from home baked and stuff like that and enjoy it. When I sit down to do the post-match show, Andy puts a nice bottle of beer in front of me, and that's nice to enjoy as well. But that doesn't mean that throughout the week I can't be making sort of better decisions on, like you say, what I'm putting in my lunchbox, you know, going out for a walk rather than just sitting all here thinking, oh, I need to do these emails and stuff like that. Emails will wait. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one's ever sat on the deathbed going, I wish I sent more emails. But they might say, I wish I'd have gone out for a walk at lunch. And you enjoy it.
Exactly. So for me, the message there is earn your pie. I mean, home-baked pies are incredible. I have a running fight with my lad when we go to the match. Is it home-baked or is it the chippy on Notting Avenue? Because he really loves their curry sauce. And so that is the treat. That's the thing where if we've done all right during the week, if we've stuck to the family menu, if we've made sure that as a family we're really active, I get up on a Saturday morning, yeah, I'm absolutely excited about going to Anfield to see the Reds. But part of me's going, I can have a Shankly pie today. That's like a double treat. And then I know full well, what's the first thing you think of when you come out of the match? You're gasping thirsty, you've been singing and shouting. You know, it's not tomato juice I'm looking forward to, it's my reward pint. But if that reward pint becomes the thing that you default to on Monday, Tuesday, well, Champions League nights, I don't know. The advice is definitely try and do 3 days off the ale, if you can. You know, May's probably going to be difficult for us, fingers crossed, but try and do 3 days off the ale. And then when you are on the ale, pace yourself. Don't say yes to every round. Make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. Have that ability to have a brilliant night out that you remember and allows all that mental health positivity and joy without, number one, waking up with a stinking hangover because you know you've harmed yourself, and we've all done it. And number two, without going over what you should be drinking over a week or a month.
Yeah, earn your pie. That is a good message for all of us. Get out on a walk, enjoy the beautiful city, wherever it is you live, or the countryside, or wherever it is. And yeah, just little things you can do. I think it's a good lesson for all of us. Little things you can do, you can change, you can swap in, just to give yourself a bit of a better quality of life. That's been great. We'll have to get you in again. You said you want to come in and talk about mental health, so we'll do that another day if that's okay with you.
Great stuff, John. Thank you.
Top man.
Great stuff from John with Simon. They've got a week between matches now, Ian, and West Ham is on the horizon. We're already thinking about it. John was talking about it before, and it's very much this idea of, all right, what are we going to do? What does need to change? What is the outlook going to be? I agree with John. I think I'd like to see, you know, something comfortable in Anfield. I'd like to see Liverpool start massively in the ascendancy and scare the living daylights out of them. What are you expecting? What do you think he's going to do?
Yeah, I think the subs yesterday maybe have given, you know, something to have a little think about. There's been a lot of chat around tiredness, and, you know, obviously you can't always measure the kind of mental tiredness and stuff, but the physical tiredness has been thrown around a lot. I've seen people say, you know, they've been absolutely flogged this season. And I said before, listen, I would have done a little bit more rotation than maybe we've seen, certainly with people like Elliott. But, you know, looking at some of the kind of numbers Liverpool players are hitting, I mean, you think about Canate, who I think's not having a particularly great time at the minute, but has been good overall this season. He's only played 25 league games. He's only played 7 Champions League games, and he's appeared in 4 League Cup matches, and they weren't all starts. So he's on 36. Now, I'm sorry, we're in April. You'd expect to be around those numbers, if not higher. So I'm not having that he's tired. Using that player as one example, you know, Virgil's played 43 games. Again, you're in April. Top players would expect to be playing around about that number, if not maybe slightly more.
Certainly if you're a centre-half.
I know, and if he gets to the end of the season, he'll have played 50 games. I think any top player over certainly the recent history of football, you are playing 50, 60 games a season. That is standard. If you're going to be successful and have a good campaign, that's where you expect to be at. I think it's different maybe for different footballers. So I think you can look at someone like Ryan Gravenberch and go, he's on the same number as Virgil. He's played 43 as well. Exactly the same, 31 league. He's played in 9 Champions League and he's appeared in 3 games in the League Cup. Now, he probably isn't used to this level of intensity. And I think in his performances since maybe Jan, Feb, you've seen him just maybe deliver an okay performance, slightly below par one. It probably just is. He's not quite used to going this deep into a season, playing this many matches, given his age, given how he's been used in the past. I think that's one player where you can look at and go, he's probably feeling the effects. Maybe he is a little bit tired. But obviously the problem is, you haven't necessarily got an ideal replacement for him. So the manager's almost thinking, well, can I just get away with it now until the end of the season?
I thought he was good yesterday.
I thought he did okay yesterday.
Against Everton.
I thought he did okay. I thought he was poor against Everton first half, but plays better second half. Lots of them to have that kind of game, in fairness. And again, let's be really, really clear. Ryan Gravenberch has had a great season. He's been one of the standouts, and he was absolutely brilliant. But he is a very young footballer. So I think it's different things for different players. You know, they're not all just tired. Some of them might be mentally tired. And listen, some of them have lived through previous campaigns where maybe it just gets a little bit too much and nerves kicking and all that stuff. So I get that. But I think it's letting one or two off the hook a little bit by just going, they're all really tired. When you look at the numbers, it's what you would expect them to be hitting and delivering in any given campaign if you're playing for Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah, I mean, you summed that up better than I could. So no, that I completely agree. I think it is it's almost a little bit of a lazy excuse, isn't it, to say, oh well, they are tired, and I don't know if I quite buy into it. I think last season I could buy into it a little bit more because they'd had so many injuries and players weren't at 100% fitness. I think now, you know, obviously they're going to have one game a week between now and the end of the season.
And that's the key thing now, Beth. I mean, that is now, from this point until the end of the campaign, they'd rather be playing in the Champions League, let's be clear. Yeah. But from now until the end of the campaign, there is a week between now and West Ham. There is then a week between, you know, it's all sorted. They're all every game's Sunday. Yeah. It's all been boxed off now. They literally know when the games are, with the exception of Brighton, which might move. But everything else now, they know exactly when it's going to kick off. And Brighton can't be before Sunday. They've literally got a week between each of them.
Yeah. And weirdly enough, that slightly makes me a little bit nervous because I always think Liverpool play better when they play every 3 days. And, you know, we talk about tiredness and stuff, but I just think Liverpool under Klopp were a team that were better when they had a little bit of rhythm and a little bit of momentum. So it will be interesting to see how they fare when they've got a whole week on the training pitch. Hopefully, you know, it gives the manager some time to work with them and sort of defensively maybe iron out a few things. It gives the likes of Ryan Gravenberch a chance to rest a little bit. And I do sort of think I wouldn't be surprised if the manager names the same team next week, because I think he is that sort of manager, maybe with Diaz coming in, hopefully Bradley coming in. But, you know, I'm not quite sure he's going to bow down to people saying you should rotate more. I think in his head, you know, for whatever reason, he sees Harvey Elliott as a sub, as a player who can come on and impact things. I'd love to see him start next week. I think he's got a really strong case for starting, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't.
I'd be surprised if he does, to be clear.
You're surprised if Elliott starts?
Yeah. Really surprised.
So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he manages things between now and the end of the season. But yeah, they're in such a strong position, and I think, you know, I was working the Everton game at the weekend, and you know, from the outset, even though they sort of dominated in terms of possession, it just sort of felt like they had one eye on Madrid, which completely fair enough. I think that's how it should be. But even at 1-1, you know, they had the better chances, but there wasn't any real conviction that they could get, you know, back into that game really, or they could win the game. And I just sort of think Arsenal now look like they've given up hope. The last thing Liverpool want to do is drop needless points over the next couple of weeks and allow this to be taken right to the end of the season.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? With you know, do you want less games or more? I think it does put a little bit more pressure on them. They've got all week to think about this. Yeah. This league game. They've got all week to think about, what if 11 goes to 8 or whatever. I actually think the distraction, if you can call it that, of a Champions League game might not be the worst thing in the world for them. But listen, you know, maybe they'll deal well under that pressure. Maybe, you know, having all week to think about West Ham, but we'll see a really commanding performance from it. Maybe the extra day's rest and things like that, and the manager having more opportunities to work with them. We've not really seen anything like this since probably the first few weeks of the season, isn't it? Where we're just playing once a week till our first international break, and he doesn't rotate at all then. He picks the same 11 and more or less makes the same subs in all 3 games. And so I agree with you, Beth. I think it is most likely that he'll pick a team against West Ham, and if it goes well, he'll look to ride that team for the rest of the season. With only really, you know, maybe Diaz and Gakpo being 2 that he looks to rotate. But I think if he can get Bradley back in and he's playing well, I think it'll be his shares for the rest of the season. And I think he'll look to go with those boys as long as it is, you know, going okay. And by okay, I mean, we're keeping the lead that we've got at the moment.
Breaking news, John, literally breaking news in the Times. Hamza Khalik Lunat, retweeted by Paul Joyce, Data Journalist of the Year for the Times, has said that Van Dijk has said there's been progress in his Liverpool contract talks.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, listen,
You didn't know. I mean, it literally just happened right now. It's been messaged in my hands.
absolutely. I think, you know, you want to be seeing the best players commit the future and stay at the club beyond the season. And Van Dijk absolutely fits into that category. I say a couple of maybe iffy performances, but as we've all said, he has been nothing short of outstanding this season, and he's going to go on and lift the Premier League in a matter of weeks now. So yeah, if he's here next season, happy days.
Excellent stuff. All right, thank you very much to Beth, to John, and to Ian, to Simon as well. Patrick for looking after the images all the way through. Andy for looking after the sounds. It's been the Anfield Wrap. It is, if we'd all been offered it, we would have taken, before the ball was kicked this season, the idea that Liverpool would be 11 points clear with 7 games to go. Let's be crystal clear about that. We'd also be surprised that it did manage that without ever winning more than 4 on the bounce. It'd be great, wouldn't it, just to win 7 on the bounce from here?